Hi everyone, I'm Celeste. Welcome to my YouTube channel, and today what I am doing is a May wrap-up. Now it's June already, and so many of my wonderful YouTube booktube friends are showing what books they plan on reading in the summertime. They're sharing their June TBRs, or in some cases an entire summer's worth of wonderful books that they plan on reading. And I want to do the same thing, but I would be remiss if I did not at first go over the books that I've already read in the month of May. I did manage to read The Merry Month of May by Nelia Gardner White. This was lovely. Well, maybe lovely is not the right word because there was a lot of tension in these stories. My favorite was the title story, The Merry Month of May. And this is a vintage collection, a new author for me, Nelia Gardner White. And I really did enjoy it. But they're all about women who have come to some sort of a crossroads in their life, and they have to make some kind of decision, or there's an emotional conflict, and it was just really well written. It was kind of a dark story, very psychological. It's about a woman who is not happy with her lot in life or with her marriage or her role as a mother and homemaker. And so it's kind of like her internal psychological monologue about that and what she decides to do. And I'm not sure if I was very satisfied with the way it ended, but it did encourage me to read more by Nelia Gardner White because the writing itself was very good, even if I didn't like what happened in the specific short story. So I will definitely be reading more of Nelia Gardner White. It was very enjoyable. So yeah, that's The Merry Month of May. I also managed to do a reread of Thomas Hardy's Tess of the D'Urbervilles, and this is a lovely Random House vintage classic from the Red Spine collection that they offer. And I enjoyed this very much. I enjoyed the reread. I both read it and listened to it. I would sort of piggyback one off the other chapter by chapter. And I have to say I enjoyed my reread of this a lot more than my reread of Far from the Madding Crowd. That one I didn't care for as much. I thought it was a bit of a a pastiche or a country morality play with stock characters and stock character ways of speaking. It just didn't seem very realistic to me. I love the movie, don't get me wrong. The Thomas Hardy movie adaptations are all lovely, but the actual Far from the Madding Crowd novel I had issues with. This I enjoyed quite a bit more, and of course it's about the fallen woman, Tess Durbeyfield, who is a young innocent who is led astray by several men, and they do her wrong. And I'm not going to go really into it because most people know what Tess of the D'Urbervilles is about, but I did enjoy my reread. And Thomas Hardy does frustrate me because on the one hand, he does portray his characters in that sort of stock character morality play way, but at the same time, he was so ahead of his time in presenting the case of Tess and just showing the male gaze in the 1800s. It's very feminist, actually. He was really ahead of his time. And so I can't fault him for that. And I love Thomas Hardy as a poet, and his lyrical prose is just so rich. His sentences are so full of opulent vocabulary, and the sounds just kind of roll over your tongue. It has a lot of what is called in poetry mouthfeel. You just love the feel and the sound of the vowels and syllables rolling over your tongue. It's very poetic, lyrical prose. So I did enjoy my reread of Tess of the D'Urbervilles. And then finally, just for fun, I'm trying to get up as far as number 15 in the Nancy Drew series, and I got to number 13 so far, The Mystery of the Ivory Charm. I'll be talking more about this one in a future video. This one was okay. I enjoyed the ones that I had read before that much more, The Clue of the Broken Locket and The Message in the Hollow Oak. But I will be coming out with another Nancy Drew video in my Girl Sleuth series very soon, so look forward to that. So I have just made my way up past number 13 in my reread of all of the Nancy Drews. What I decided to focus on in the month of May was my TBR slasher project, and that involves this handy dandy spinning wheel. I just love the sound that makes. It's so much fun. And basically on this spinning wheel, we have all the years from 2012 through 2024, 2025. And the reason for that is because I have so many books in my TBR pile, my physical TBR stack, and also on Audible, that did come out from 2012 on. And I tend to stick within my safe bubble of vintage reads, classic reads, cozy reads, and things like that. And I still do plan on reading a lot more and bringing you a lot more of that content. But I also want to expand my horizons a bit and make sure I am reading some contemporary titles. And to that end, in January, I read The Frozen River by Ariel Lahan, which was fantastic. In February, I read The Black Count, which was a nonfiction book, and that was by Tom Rice. In March, I read Mrs. England by Stacey Halls. Fantastic sort of gothic spooky novel, very atmospheric. In April, I read Letters of Great Women, and that was also fantastic. And so I did want to share with you the books that I read in May. What I decided to do is, because I have so many other kinds of reads over the summer that I'd like to do, I wanted to get ahead of my TBR slasher project. So I actually read 5 titles in May. I spun the wheel. I know I'm supposed to do that live with you online, and I am failing miserably at this. I had imagined that I would do a reading vlog every month where I excitedly spin the wheel. It lands on the number live in front of you, whatever year I'm going to be reading from. And then I meant to go through all of my possible choices for that year from my list. Then I'm supposed to narrow it down, show you all the possible books I could read from that year, give you my reasoning, then select the book I'm going to read, and then do a lovely reading vlog that takes you through my days and evenings as I read in different locations and give you my impressions every 50 pages or so. Did that happen at all? No. Did I record myself spinning the wheel even? Also no. I am horrible at this. It's just not working out that way. My life is not such where it's easy for me to do daily filming of a vlog. So I am just going to be recounting what happened with the TBR challenge, and it will have to be an honor system where you just trust me that I did spin the wheel and land on certain years and read from that list of possibilities. The first year that came up was 2024, and so there were several choices, and there was The Wharton Plot by Mariah Fredericks. I decided to wait until the winter to read that, and that is a mystery starring Edith Wharton as the protagonist, as the detective, so that sounds really cool. And then the other choice was The Household by Stacey Halls, another intriguing one, but I just read Stacey Halls in March, Mrs. England, and so it's a little too soon for me to read another one. The Household is, it sounds exciting though. It's about, I think, Charles Dickens' Home for Wayward Women. And it's partially a true story, I believe, or it's based on something that actually happened. So that would be a great one maybe for like Victober or at least the autumn. But I didn't want to read another Stacey Halls right away. So that left one choice, and that was Alan Bennett's Killing Time. And this is Killing Time. It's a very slim, slender little book. And no. I, a year or two ago, presented another tiny little slim volume by Alan Bennett, and that was called The Uncommon Reader. And that was wonderful. It's become one of my favorite books. I display it downstairs in my living room on a little stand. I bought a special edition from Hatchard's bookstore in London. I had it shipped to me. And I was so excited about it. And I was like, oh, I'm going to have a new Alan Bennett book to put in my collection. I thought it was going to be similar to The Uncommon Reader in terms of its spirit. The Uncommon Reader, if you don't know, when her corgis stray into a mobile library outside Buckingham Palace, Queen Elizabeth feels duty-bound to borrow a book, and she just does it to be polite, but she really enjoys reading the book from the mobile library mobile, and she continues to borrow books and have conversations with people about the books that she reads. And the basic theme of the book is the power of literature to change even the most uncommon reader's life. And I love it because it's a tribute to the power of literature, it's a tribute to books. The way it's written, regardless of what you may or may not feel about Queen Elizabeth as a real life person, it's just such a quaint and charming story that I fell in love with it, and I read it almost yearly. But it's the only thing by Alan Bennett I had ever read. So I was super excited when Killing Time came out. I read it in one sitting while I was waiting for my son in one of his classes, and I was sitting out in the car. And this is about Hilltop House, which is a Superior Council home for the elderly. And among the residents are a woman called Mrs. McBride, who I believe is sort of running the place. She's an admin. There's Mr. Peckover, who is a archaeologist. They're all elderly seniors living in this community. There's Phyllis, who does nothing but knit. There is Mr. Cresswell, who is a hairdresser. There's a chiropodist, etc., etc. And so I thought this was going to have the same humor and spirit as The Uncommon Reader did, because The Uncommon Reader made me smile, it made me cry, it made me choke up. It made me laugh out loud, like chuckling, guffaw, hearty belly laughs. I mean, I had all of the emotions with that book. This one, not so much. I was looking forward to loving it and giving it an automatic 5 stars. I felt like the humor in this was mean-spirited, and it was very depressing. Even if you are presenting, I don't stray away from serious topics, depression, death, war, abortion. I don't stray away from the difficult subjects, but they're always, regardless of how dark something is, there has to be some hope in stories that I enjoy. I feel like my 5-star reads are the ones that have a glimmer of hope. There's a little light coming from somewhere, even if it's just through a crack. And it's mean-spirited and it's sad. It does take place when COVID happens, and so that would have been a very interesting study of what seniors do during something like a pandemic. And it does accurately show You know, there are the non-maskers and the people who end up being rude. Everyone's trying to assert their own rights and all of that. But the COVID part was sad with the things that ensued from COVID, especially with those with delicate immune systems and the elderly, or those with pre-diagnosed physical issues and medical conditions. But in addition to that, the humor was just kind of mean, and I didn't feel like there was that sense of redemption or humor or hope I was looking for, except for gallows humor. I enjoy gallows humor as much as the next person, but it was mean. I just didn't like it. I didn't like it. I'm sorry, Alan Bennett. I know you've written other things that are lovely, but this did not do it for me, and I will not be keeping this in my collection. You know, even though it's a slim little book you can read in an hour, it is taking up too much valuable shelf space, so this will be donated to my local used bookshop. Okay, so after reading Killing Time by Alan Bennett, I was kind of disappointed. I didn't want to end on a disappointed note, so I decided to keep going with the TBR Slasher Initiative, and I spun the wheel again. This time, the year that came up was 2017, and I had lots of choices to read for 2017. Some of the choices available were Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee, The Vanderbeekers of 141st Street by Karina Jan Glazer. I know I'm late to the party on this one, never read it. And then additionally, The Watchmaker of Filigree Street by Natasha Pulley. While I do want to read all of these, and they are in my TBR pile, I decided to go with The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now, first up, let me show you this amazingly beautiful edition. It's all in this kind of shimmery emerald green and copper with orange on it, and here's the back of it with a letter from Evelyn. Very clever. And if you look inside, this is like a special edition. If you look inside, the end papers are also beautiful. Here's Los Angeles, it's Hollywood. That's on both the front and back end papers. And that's nothing to speak of the gorgeous, gorgeous sprayed edges of this book that have a wedding ring for each of the seven husbands. So physically, this is a gorgeous book, okay? No doubt. If you don't know, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is about a reclusive former movie star named Evelyn Hugo, and she announces the auctioning of her collection of old famous gowns from all of her motion pictures that she starred in Hollywood during the 40s, 50s, and 60s. I think 40s, it may have begun in the 50s. Anyway, she's decided she's going to raise money for a breast cancer charity, and so she's going to sell off all her gowns. And in conjunction with this auction, she decides to grant an interview about the auction and chooses a magazine where there is a journalist, a young woman named Monique. And Monique has no personal connection to Evelyn. Monique is very surprised that Evelyn has chosen her to do the interview because she's just sort of up and coming. There are many more famous journalists and editors who would love to be given the interview with Evelyn Hugo and would give their eye teeth to do so. Monique ends up going to Evelyn Hugo's apartment, and they discuss writing her biography. Instead of just doing an article on her, Evelyn has gotten Monique to come to the apartment because she secretly wants her to write a whole biography about her life that she's going to dictate to her. And the book ensues from there, and each of the sections of the book talk about one of her seven husbands. And it's been very, very popular. Taylor Jenkins Reid is a hugely popular author. I had never read anything by Taylor Jenkins Reid, so I thought, wouldn't it be fun to read an old-time Hollywood expose kind of a novel? because I love movies, I love motion pictures. 2 years ago, I attempted to do a tag called Cinemarch, or March Movie Madness, and I tried to get people to watch movies and read books that were turned into movies, and I just love all of that. I'm a cinemaholic. I love it. This, unfortunately, did not turn out to be that. I think I was slightly disappointed in this book simply because it's been praised so much and has such, a huge following, and it's over 4 stars on Goodreads, for example. Everyone I know on BookTube has loved this. It has been the darling of the internet and of the book reading world. For me, it was fine. It was fine. I thought the writing was kind of uninspired. And, I'm an older booktuber. I grew up with parents who were in the same generation as Evelyn. I know how they spoke and sounded, and I've watched so many movies that I do know how people of that generation, actors and actresses, would have spoken at the time. And although Taylor Jenkins Reid obviously has done her research, I believe she actually lived in California and worked in the film industry, it wasn't enough because it didn't sound convincing to me that it was really from that era, in that day and age, with an actress like that. It just didn't sound authentic to me. I didn't believe it. I couldn't suspend my disbelief. So it is competently written in a contemporary style, but it ends up, how can I put this? This is going to sound like kind of insulting, and I don't mean it to, but it ends up coming off as sort of Kristen Hanna. I read a book by Kristen Hanna last year, The Women. I enjoyed it, but some of the writers of today, contemporary authors, when they try to tackle something historical, they still end up having kind of the cadence and vocabulary of a contemporary young woman, and it just does not convince someone like me who is an older reader. I may be alone in that opinion. I'm sure there are other older readers who loved it and found it convincing, but I am not one of them. I'm sorry. So I have an unpopular opinion about this. I also found it highly unbelievable, all of the things that Evelyn Hugo was able to recount about her life from years and years and years ago. You remember major events, and sometimes you remember specific things about specific evenings. But for example, Evelyn remembered so many specific details about daily life 20 years ago. She remembers going out one Tuesday night 50 years ago, and what color designer dress she was wearing and what jewelry she wore with it, and how she wore her hair and what style, and who came to the door first and who was second, and the whole conversation that was held on that evening, and how she slipped into another room and then chatted with somebody else. It just was not believable to me that she would remember so many specific details. That was a little bit unbelievable too. I would have enjoyed it more and respected it more if she was a little bit dim about a lot of it, and you don't remember all of those things. So that was quite unbelievable. And lastly, I didn't feel anything for our young protagonist and narrator, Monique, who was the journalist taking down Evelyn Hugo's story. I just didn't like her. I found her very drab. I found her very conventional. I found her, I don't know, there was just nothing special or different. There was no it factor that made me care about her. So I wasn't that invested in her descriptions of what was going on in the book. There is a reveal toward the end of the book, and I was expecting it, really. It wasn't that much of a shock to me what we find out. So overall, this was okay. like I said, it was fine, but I don't get what all of the hype was about. Will I read another Taylor Jenkins Reid book? Absolutely. You know, I will give another one a try. She has numerous novels available. I think she just came out with one this year too. But unfortunately, this one did not really do it for me, and I will probably be selling this copy of The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Okay, so I had read a book from 2024, then I spun the wheel again and read one from 2017. Still wasn't satisfied with my TBR slasher, even though I read 2 books from the big pile and got done with them. I read them. So I decided to spin yet again. And this time, 2022 came up on the wheel. And for 2022, again, lots of interesting books that I could have read from that year. So for example, we had Daisy Darker by Alice Faney. I really do want to read this one. It's a suspense novel, and it's supposed to be kind of a riff in the tradition of And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. It's set on an island. It's storm-tossed, and it's a locked room or locked island, kind of a mystery. And so I'm excited to get to this one, but I didn't feel like reading it just now. There was also I think it's a horror novel. I don't know much about this one, I admit, but this is Gallant by V.E. Schwab, and I believe this is also a dark gothic suspense novel. It may be horror even. I think I read that this was kind of a horror version of The Secret Garden. That could be wrong, or it could be a takeoff on that or similar in some way. It says, 16-year-old Olivia Pryor is missing 3 things: a mother, a father, and a voice. Her mother vanishes, her father by degrees. Her voice was a thing she never had to start with. And after she's at a boarding school, she receives a letter from an uncle she's never met, summoning her to his estate, Gallant. But when she arrives, she discovers that the letter was years late. Her uncle is dead and the estate is empty, save for her cousin Matthew and the servants. Olivia is permitted to remain, but must follow the rules. Don't go out after dusk. Always stay on the right side of the crumbling wall. So that certainly does sound like it's involving some secret garden elements, but maybe in a dark, suspenseful, gothic way. Again, never read any V.E. Schwab, and I do want to read this very soon, maybe in the fall. The cover is gorge. And also, look at these end papers. I mean, it looks beautiful. I don't know if V.E. Schwab is good or not. I know she's written is it Addie LaRue? Strange History of Addie LaRue or something like that. But anyway, didn't feel like reading this just now. Similarly, I could read Black Cake, which also came out in 2022, I believe, or at least my edition was. Beautiful cover. This is by Shermaine Wilkinson, and this is a resonant, beautiful story of children trying to understand the mother they have lost. Shermaine Wilkinson transports you across the decades and around the globe, and so I believe this takes you to an island, but I'm not quite sure where. Anyway, that's Black Cake. Again, another one I want to read. This was part of the Read with Jenna book club, and I got this edition for $1, and it was a discard from a library. But the one that I decided to read is one it's one of the oldest books on my TBR, actually, and that is Horse by Geraldine Brooks. Beautiful cover. I've been wanting to read this one for years. I have never read any Geraldine Brooks. So I do have my notes here for Horse, so I will be referring to them. This is a very quiet and contemplative book. It's a braided narrative, so we have several different people's lives in kind of a slice of life moment, and they're all sort of converging. Some of the characters live in the past, in the 1850s in Kentucky, and some of them live in the present day. So we have Jarrett, who lives in 1850s Kentucky, and he is a horse trainer. There's also a character named Theo, and he is an art historian, an art writer. He's like an art critic. He writes about art. And he finds a painting of a racehorse in a discarded pile of junk and decides to investigate it. And we have Jess, who is an osteologist, I want to say. She studies bones and works with the Smithsonian. And they actually have the full intact skeleton of a racehorse. And so the stories of Jarrett in the 1850s and these modern characters and other characters all kind of converge using a horse as the commonality, as the hub that brings them all together. Elements of this story are drawn from real history because there was a great racehorse from Kentucky named Lexington. And so it's sort of based on his life story. It's a sad story. It's very bittersweet. There are some very lovely moments in it. The writing is very lush. The prose style is wonderful. Geraldine Brooks is a gifted writer. And ultimately, we're sort of seeing a story of systemic racism told around the provenance of a painting and a skeleton, and we get to see who the real racehorse was. So it's definitely worth a read. I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I finished it. I'll probably try another Geraldine Brooks book sometime in the future. For me, this was probably 3.75 stars. Possibly 4 stars. Definitely worth looking at, but just sad and quiet. I decided to continue on because I still had a week left in May. I decided to read another book from 2022. This time I decided to read something entirely different, and I knew that this particular book was supposed to be a feel-good book, a very warm, cozy, feel-good book. And so I needed that after the seriousness, the grave seriousness, literally, of Horace, which was monumental in some ways. Profound and necessary, but I just needed after that to read something a bit lighter, and so I decided to go with Welcome to the Hyunam-Dong Bookshop by Hwang Bo-Reum. And I am definitely interested in healing fiction, and I'm sort of working on a project where I am looking into healing fiction and different kinds of healing activities. And this is my first time venturing into reading what's called a healing fiction novel. This is from Korea, and I'm just consulting my notes here. This is the story of Young-ju, who had a demanding career, a difficult marriage. She was unhappy, and she decides to give it all up to become a bookstore owner. I've had that dream, have you? She's emotionally burned out. She buys a bookstore, and at first the bookstore is not doing well. She cries all the time. She sits by herself, and the customers that trickle in, because it's in a kind of an obscure area of town, and it's kind of a somber downer of a bookstore, and so they don't buy anything. It's not doing well. She hires a barista. She reads a lot of books. She writes little write-ups for each of the books, and she decides that she's going to buck up and make the best of it, and she starts writing these little reviews for each of the books. And similarly to Horse, this is a narrative that's told through the experiences of several different characters in the book. There's the barista, there's Young-ju, the book owner, there's also a coffee bean maker. She makes the coffee from the bean. There's a writer. So it's very introspective. I would say it is very charming and healing, and it's worth a read. However, it was not a 5-star read to me because, again, it was too much contemplation and not enough active plot. I don't always need that in a book, but in a contemporary book, for some reason, I feel like I need it. In a classic, I don't. Maybe I do look for that no matter what I read. I'm going to have to think about that a little bit. But it was, again, so quiet, like not enough was happening. You come to the end of the book and it's kind of, the narrative arc is just kind of like that. It's very calm and quiet. Beautiful, very beautiful. I would recommend it. And I would give this one 3.75 stars. Each book I've been reading has been getting higher and higher ratings from me, so that's a good thing. I decided to spin the wheel one last time, and this time I read Sweet Bean Paste. This is by Durian Sukegawa. It's translated from the Japanese. I've been wanting to read this one ever since it was published, and this was my 5-star read. I thought it was lovely. Yeah, this is about Sentaru, and he has a criminal record. He drinks too much. He is working in a tiny shop outside of Tokyo, making something called dorayaki, which is a pancake filled with a sweet bean paste. And dorayaki are kind of confection. He's basically just going through the motions of life. He shows up to work with no motivation. He uses frozen bean paste. He doesn't even make his own. He wonders why the shop isn't doing as well as it should be. He just shows up. He's phoning in his life. He phones it in. And then he spends his evenings drinking. He doesn't particularly like any of the customers or try to get to know them. But one morning, Toku, I think that's how you pronounce her name. Please correct me if that's wrong. An elderly woman appears outside of the shop near a beautiful cherry blossom tree, and everything changes from that moment on. Quietly and slowly, but it does change. This story is beautiful. It's compact enough that you can read it in a couple of days. It is quiet, it is healing, it is contemplative, it is heartwarming, it's charming. The descriptions of the cherry blossoms and the making of the sweet bean paste and the pancakes is lovely. It's very meditative and very much in the moment. And the thing I liked about this book that I didn't find so much in this book is that this one also has another story to it, and you learn about one of the characters' backgrounds, their history, and why they are the way they are. And you actually go visit them and learn about their life, and you learn a little bit about some history, some cultural history, which I found fascinating. And I like this because there is elder representation, just as there is in Killing Time, but this, where Killing Time by Ellen Bennett was not very hopeful, this is hopeful. There's still very serious and perhaps slightly depressing topics discussed in this book, but there is a ray of hope. It's redemptive, and it is just such a breath of fresh spring air. It's just lovely. It's like that smell after winter that you get in the spring where the breeze blows and you smell cherry blossoms or lilacs, and you just smell the green earth and you smell spring in the air. It's wonderful. This is the best thing I read, and I'm glad I held out and kept reading until I came up with my 5-star read. I strongly recommend you grab yourself a copy of this, and if you ever need to be uplifted or at least to put your own life in some perspective, this is a great one to do that. So, in summary, I read Killing Time, which I gave 2.75 stars. I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I gave that 3 stars. I read Horse, which I gave, I think, 4 stars. I read Hyunam-Dong Bookshop, which I gave 3.75 stars. Welcome to the Hyunam-Dong Bookshop. And I read Sweet Bean Paste from 2017, which I gave 5 stars. So there you have it. I was able to read 5 books from my TBR pile by using my spinning wheel and my TBR slasher project. I'm so glad I read these books. I've been wanting to read them forever. I've been curious about them forever. Some of them were not the greatest reads and some of them were marvelous. So it's a very worthwhile project to me, a worthwhile endeavor, and I'm glad I'm doing it. And because I have read 5, I am well ahead of the curve. I'm supposed to be reading 1 per month. I've gotten 5 more out of the way, plus a vintage book, an old classic, and a Nancy Drew. Not bad for the month of May. So that's my wrap up. Thank you for joining me today. And now that I have reported in on everything I read in May, I'm so excited to come to you again next week with my plans for summer 2025, and I hope you'll join me. Until then, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.